At the same time, though, this week, the nation's attention is firmly fixed, perhaps somewhat, on the Finance Ministry as we prepare for the medium-term budget policy statement, often called the mini-budget. This is where the government sets out its spending priorities and provides a crucial health check on the country's finances for the years ahead. With persistent high unemployment, a cost of living crisis effectively, and deep-seated inequality, every rand collected and allocated is a matter of profound importance, especially for the most vulnerable. To help us preview this key policy statement and discuss what we must demand from a budget that serves the interests of economic justice, we're joined by the chairperson for the Budget Justice Coalition, that's Matshidiso Lencoasa, who joins us in the studio. Matshidiso, thank you. Appreciate the time. It was just 4 months ago, right, that we approved the budget, and now we're already here. What difference does the medium-term budget policy statement make? I mean, if we start at the basics, what's the point of it?
Yeah, so firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about it. And you're right, it's been not even a budget cycle. This whole year has felt like one persistent budget speech after the other. And I think the mini-budget, even though it is seemingly less dramatic, and we anticipate it to be less dramatic because it is an adjustments budget, but it's a huge opportunity for government to look back at, you know, the lessons that they've learned this year and to look at the problems that are facing our country and better position our nation's finances, so the public finances, you know, all the taxes that people are paying, be it through VAT, be it through fuel levy when you take a taxi, or if you're lucky enough to earn a taxable income through your income. We're looking to make sure that every single rand actually goes towards fixing the problems that face the country, which, as you mentioned, you know, our persistent unemployment, inequality and poverty in our country. You know, South Africans really deserve better, and here's an opportunity to adjust and align our finances to reflect that.
Yeah, and it's that important conversation to say, okay, well, it's looking forward, and primarily when we call it the medium-term budget policy statement, we're looking into the medium term, effectively, at some stage, over 3 years or so, and where exactly we expect our spending to be, and that's what this primarily does. But even over the next 3 years, there's a sense of there's meant to be an improvement. But is that improvement a sustainable one? Is it one that actually gives credence to where consumers will feel like every day it's helped them? Will food prices go any lower, electricity prices, etc.? Is that what comes of something like this?
Yeah, and I think those are the crucial questions that we should be asking, because over the past decade, you know, government has been under fiscal consolidation, or like pursuing a primary budget surplus, which is that they would like our expenditure to be less than the revenue that we collect, you know, so that we can have healthy-looking finances. But unfortunately, in that context, our economy hasn't been growing at the rate that it should be. And rather than our budget being a response or a way to better position our economy to actually build a nation that works for everyone, unfortunately, we've been doubling down on a path that doesn't seem to be working. In fact, it seems to be worsening the economic hardships that millions of people in this country face. And so we're really hoping that, you know, you're right, that in the medium-term budget statement also shows us the thinking of government over the next 3 years, what they anticipate for the next budget speech next year, which is obviously going to be a site of political contestation as well. Yeah. But we're hoping that in that, that they foreground the needs of the people in this country and look at the tools that we have at our disposal, the way that we collect revenue, the way that we tax, and how we build an economy that can absorb the millions of people who want to serve and you know, secure futures of their own through employment. And I think this is an important opportunity to do so.
Are we going down the right path? Is the way we're looking at the budget and the way we're doing the budget as a country the right way to do it? And I don't mean in terms of where we put the numbers, etc., but where we allocate the funding, how we're allocating the funding, how we're dealing with taxes, who we're taxing, etc. Are we dealing with this correctly? Or are we still applying a very Western approach to problems that are specifically South African? And that's why we aren't getting the growth where we need it to go. And of course, implementation being a key part of that equation.
Another really, really good question, because I don't think that we can ever say that we're going in the right path in terms of our economy if the economy is not there to serve the people of our country, if we don't foreground ordinary South Africans. And, you know, this year, I mean, there have been some notable wins by National Treasury and the government, is that we've been removed off of the grey list, which means that international markets and international investors trust South Africa's government more with their finances. You know, there was a lot of political will and urgency to regain those international markets trust. But I wondered, can we, you know, it would be nice to see a budget, and it would be nice to see a national treasury that also has the same kind of urgency in rebuilding ordinary South Africans' trust. You know, I mean, we're all paying taxes, like I mentioned, through our different ways, and many people even say that as ordinary South Africans we're overtaxed. And I think that it's not so much just that we're overtaxed, but we'd like to see value for that money. Every single rand that we pay and every single economic hardship that is endured is actually going towards building a public sector that works for all. I think that we'd love to see that, you know, putting South Africans at the heart of the budget. I think that's the only way that we'll be able to then say that, you know, we're going in the right direction.
So how many months did it take us to get out of the grey list? How many months was it again? It was, what, just over a year?
Yeah.
Right, so if we think about how long it took us to be able to do that, we got specific things that we needed to fix, right? And we said, okay, we're going to fix them. We know exactly what we need to fix when it comes to our budget as a country and what it is that will help us grow. We've known this for decades, and yet we still haven't gotten it done. Are we looking to appeal more to international investors than we are to our very own? To your point, where we're seeking the approval of international investors to have their money in the country, as opposed to the tax-paying citizens of this country who are still getting no water in many places, lights and electricity being cut off in many places, refuse and sanitation. You're still seeing the springing up of what was a confirmed figure yesterday of more than 4,000 informal settlements in the country too. Are we seeking the approval of international investors more than our own people?
Unfortunately, I think that's the criticism that we have as civil society around our positioning. I mean, you know, on the one hand, you could argue that interventions like removing us from the grey list could be positive in the sense that maybe our interest on debt, like debt, will be a lot cheaper, so then we have more money to invest in education and health. But I think that there's also a trust issue, because oftentimes any savings that we've had as a country have been reallocated towards making our budget or our finances look more stable for international markets. But I think that is a really good question, because what is the point of an economy? What is the point of paying taxes? What is the point of it all if it's not to build a nation and it's not to secure the futures of the millions of people in this country who deserve it? And so I really hope that this year has been a learning curve for our governments, for National Treasury at large, and that there will be the same urgency. You know, that 22-point action plan that they applied to remove us off of the grey list, we'd love to see that in provincial and local municipalities. We'd love to see interventions to overcome underspending and corruption and really rebuild the trust of our country, so that we can get back into building a social fabric and a country that really works for all of us.
Okay. On the other side, you have the conversation about inflation targeting happening out of the South African Reserve Bank, wanting it to now be 3%, and in many ways being a rule or law unto themselves in creating this, with what they deem as a good reasoning. Right, that if you keep inflation low, it means that prices increase slower, right? And it takes longer for prices to reach a particular level, which would be good for ordinary South Africans, because you don't have to keep paying these price increases as we've seen things go up. On the other hand, National Treasury says, yes, but you have to go through the right process in order to do this. I don't want to say who's right. I don't want to ask you who's right. But of what benefit is that to everyday South Africans?
Yes, and again, this is the most important thing, that when we are looking at our budgets or looking at our monetary policy, the most important thing needs to be, how are we addressing the problems or the economic challenges that ordinary South Africans are facing? And so on the one hand, it sounds like an argument that makes sense, that we need our prices to contain our prices as much as possible, and it also appeals to international markets, because the rand is more stable, and so they trust in investing their money in our country. But then, if we actually look at the problems that are facing our country, you know, unemployment is one of the the most persistent problems that we just have not been able to get right in our economy. And so, yes, prices are going up, but the huge issue that millions of people in this country face is that they don't have opportunities to gain gainful employment. And then if you look at like the Reserve Bank being given that mandate to, if it does go through, that they target inflation at 3%, the impact of that is that the Reserve Bank will do whatever it takes to make sure that prices reach at 3%. And what tools do they have at their disposal? Well, it is to actually increase interest rates. If they increase interest rates, governments as an employer, for instance, doesn't have the same kind of room. They they'll be spending more on debt, which we currently are doing, than hiring more doctors, nurses and teachers, which impacts ordinary South Africans adversely. At the same time, businesses also will have less money. It'll be more expensive debt, so they'll have less money to actually also hire ordinary South Africans and absorb them into the economy. And so it does bring us back to that agitation of our monetary policy. You know, one of our biggest problems in our country is our unemployment crisis. What is our monetary policy doing, and what can it do to actually position itself to actually solve the problem of unemployment? And I think that's a conversation that we have to be having around the medium-term budget statement.
Your Finance Minister, or your Finance Minister, Matshidiso Lencoasa, and you're delivering the medium-term budget policy statement tomorrow. 5 priorities. What are those?
I mean, definitely the triple challenge that has been spoken about, that poverty, inequality and unemployment, that is really at the heart of economic crisis in our country, because really, like, especially for our generation, young people, young black women in particular, who are considered the face of unemployment, those are the priorities, I think, that, you know, that's what we're looking forward to. I think other issues that we're also looking to solve, or if I was in that in that position, would be to be prioritizing building the capacity of provinces to actually spend the money, because we have a deep underspending problem across the country. So the little money that we've taken, the little money that we have to education, towards health, towards all of that, doesn't actually end up going towards that. It ends up being returned because it's not being spent. And so we need greater consequence management on that. And of course, accountability. I think that we're in an accountability era as a country where we're really looking to regain. We want to trust our government, but unfortunately, at this moment, there is a trust deficit. And so I think those are the 5 areas that I would focus on. And I would like to hope that the finance minister's on the same page at that.
We certainly hope so. And so we'll be there tomorrow to give live coverage of that medium-term budget policy statement. Hopefully we can chat to you as well and be part of that conversation. Matshidiso, appreciate it. Thank you so much. And hopefully we've given people a bite-sized preview and understanding to what's to come in the budget, in the medium-term budget, or mini-budget as it's sometimes called as well, to give you a sense of where to from here, what could possibly happen, and how exactly your finances could be spent. And the country's taxes too. That's Matshidiso Lencoasa, the Budget Justice Coalition.